So you've done your planting right, and you've got your fencing and your weed control done, and now you're ready to move on with the funnest part of your project, getting your plants and shrubs in the ground. It's a really important part of the project, and if done right, it'll ensure that you get great seedling survival over the first years of your project.
So on planting day, you want to make sure that, that the plants are thoroughly wet, soaked. And even soaking them in sea salt is a good insurance to really make them kick off as soon as when they're planted. So the roots need to be well held together and well grown there. The plants well hardened off so they can cope with frost, and any frost sensitive plants like these, maybe these spotted gums, plant later in the season. But really you can plant any time through winter depending on the moisture conditions of the soil. So we want the soil to be nice moist, again that cubic metre of soil, all bare and moist, ready for planting.
So when it comes time to plant, the choice of planting implement is going to depend on the scale of your site and where your site is in the landscape. If you've got a large number of plants, you might look to need a Hamilton planter or an auger. If you've got a small number, then a shovel or a mattock is going to be your best tool for the job.
There's a number of different ways that we can put plants in the ground, and these are the potty putkis, and these are designed particularly for hyco plants. You can actually get extra big ones for forestry tubes. A person can probably put in at least 1,000 trees a day. If they've got someone keeping the plants up to them, you can really put a lot of plants in. Now the other thing is, if you've used a pre-emergent herbicide, that acts as a kind of a layer on the surface of the soil. So you don't really want to mix that layer in between down on the roots of the plant. The potty putki puts the plant in below that surface soil and drops it in so the surface soil is still there with the pre-emergent on the surface. And a bit of a tamping down the edge. Where you've got the Hamilton tree planter, that again does that same thing. It doesn't disturb the soil. So if you've used a pre-emergent, you don't want to use a spade and dig it all in and mix all the soil together. There's also these drill augers that are fairly new, and they do a good job, particularly if you're planting in amongst remnant vegetation or in difficult sites. And if you've got the forestry tubes, there's the Hamilton tree planter, which just takes out the plug of the soil exactly the same as the tube, and you put the tube in. If you have a container like one of these, you can put a whole mix of plants in, because often in hyco trays you'll get one species per tray, and when you're planting for biodiversity you want a mixture of species. So taking the plants out, putting them in a mixture of plants in a container like this or a bucket can really help as you're walking along with the hyco to actually make a mixture of different species.
So we're going to start our planting today. We've already scalped a spot for our plant to go in, and we've dug a hole. You need to make sure that your hole is deeper than the depth of your pot, and break up that dirt in the bottom. You want a nice loose hole with, friable dirt to plant into. So we've got our shrub for this site. We're going to pop in a little ovens wattle. Just need to make sure that your hole is deep enough so the top of the plant sits level with the soil surface at the site. If it's a particularly wet site, you do need to probably provide a little bit of drainage, and we might like to do what we call mounding for that, where we actually build up the soil into a slight rise first and then dig our hole for planting. So scoop the dirt out, and then you just want to gently get your plant out of the pot. So the easiest way normally to do that is to give the pot a gentle squeeze and then tip it over, give it a tap, and it should just slide out. Now there's no need to tickle the roots of the native plant. You can just put that straight in gently like that. Support the plant with one hand and backfill around the plant. It's really important to make sure that all of the potting mix is covered with the soil from the hole, because if you have any potting mix showing, that will dry out when the summer comes.
If you get the hyco tubes, they need popping out. They're hard to get out at times, some very well grown ones. So we find that these poppers, which is just a board with a little screw in the end that's handmade, and it's just adjusted so we can actually pop the plants out and make them easy to actually lift out of the hycos, because sometimes if they've got good roots they really are tough to get out.
It's also really important to water your plant in when you're planting. What this does is removes any air bubbles under the soil and gives good contact with the roots and the surrounding soil. So it's a good idea to have a water cart on site, particularly if you've got a large number of plants. Depending on the time of the year, sometimes you might only need half a litre of water to water that plant in. Otherwise, if it's particularly dry and we haven't had a lot of winter rainfall, you'll actually need to give a couple of litres to give a really good soak at that site. For really gold star treatment, you can also think about mulching your plants over summer. Now, that's something that you can't do on a large site, but if you've only got 50 plants that you're putting in for a habitat spot on your property, then it might be something that's quite viable. If you've got it on your property, a bit of loose chip bark works wonders. So mulch will help you to suppress weeds, but it also will conserve a lot of moisture at your site over summer and stop this surrounding ground around your new plant from drying out in the hot baking sun that we have here. If you use a mulch, it will reduce the frequency of watering over summer. So for efficiency, it's probably easy to pop your guards together before you actually do your planting. You can have a wheelbarrow of them on the side and just walk down the row and chuck them out where you're going to do your planting. For this particular site, we've just got a basic milk carton guard with 2 bamboo stakes, and that's worked fine here in the past. So good idea, you pop your guard over the top of the plant, lining the plant up in the middle of the guard, and then you push the stakes through the side of the guard. Now, in nice ground like this, you can do that by hand, or otherwise you might need a hammer to get them in the end of the way. Make sure they're nice and secure. And that's it, we're done.
Okay, well, another good way of planting, if you've got a well-prepared site and it's fairly flat and it's got good soil moisture, is a mechanical tree planter. It's really quick and easy. And if you've got the plants here, you can use either the tubes, tube stock or Hycos.
So I think it is really important to address and have a think about whether you're going to need to water your plants over summer. Every site is different and the soil type at every site is going to be different as well. So down here on the river flats, it'll retain moisture for a lot longer than what it will in a gravelly hill slope. If you've invested all that time in purchasing your plants and planting them well, I think it's really important to give them a drink over summer, particularly in the driest times. That may start as early as October and November in a particularly dry year if we haven't had a good winter. Certainly December and January, you're really going to be more aware of it because the air temperature is up and we feel the heat ourselves, so the plants are also suffering then. Summer storms can provide a really good input of moisture to the soil, and that may decrease the need for watering over those months that we get those intense summer rainfall activities. In terms of the frequency of watering, it will depend on your site. I say to my landholders, be prepared to water once a month in those driest times, and you want to give the plants a really good soak. It's like your tomato plants at home. Frequent shallow watering promotes really dense roots near the surface and not good deep penetrating roots. So give them, 9 litre, a bucket, every few weeks or every month, and let them have a good soaking drink. When it comes to doing some maintenance of your plants over time, one of the things to think about is removing the guards. So a plant that's grown to this height, the guards have done their job, they've helped the plant get established. So the cockies have started having a go at this already, and this will break down naturally on site because it's just 100% cardboard. But if it is choking your plant, you need to consider coming along and either breaking off the stakes or pulling the stakes out, and you can actually clean them up and keep going.